Okay, hey, wow, a little late, little delayed, past the 4 o'clock hour, um, but I'm just getting off the road. I obviously you caught me as I'm just jumping into studio. Hey, I appreciate you guys joining me, as I always do. It is Thursday, the 15th of February, and man alive, where of the first 45, 46 days of 2024 gone? More in 2024. And at this rate, I don't know how we can have any more. It's going to be over before we get more. But I promise you, we are just getting started. You haven't seen anything yet. And it's coming. It's coming soon. It's coming at a rate that I don't believe that any of us can fathom. In fact, you've tuned into the news. You see what is happening around us. Hey, I just noticed that I left off one of my lights, and I don't know if it's better with the light on or without the light on. So if you're in the comments section, best definitely let me know what you think about, um, how things are looking in studio. I'm going to put this up so you can all see that we are live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 5 p.m. Give or take maybe a minute or two here at Rumble, YouTube, X, and Facebook. We're going to continue to push into this because there is so much to cover. Uh, I don't even know where to begin with what has happened on the national level, the world stage, and even here locally in just a matter of 48 hours since our last show. It literally, when we say more in 2024, the rate of acceleration for good, bad, and ugly is going to be exponential. I find that to be the case. I know that you are. I look a little bit like I just looked at myself in the camera, and of course, I haven't turned my other light on yet. I look a little bit like Zelensky with this vest on. I didn't realize that the color combination probably isn't the best. I might have to take my vest off, but also I think I need to turn that light on because I think it does a better job of taking the shadowing off of my eyes. Right now, I look like I'm really in a bunker. Bear with me while I do that. Just give me a second. I'll be stage right. Don't worry, I'm coming back. Oh, look at that. I can already tell that it has put a whole different ambiance on the studio. Look, there we go. Now I'm feeling a little more alive. There is a little shadowing there, but I'll have to dial that in later. I appreciate all of you that are kind of starting to find their way to the DPB show podcast. Um, Folks, I know I left it here on Tuesday, but I think it's important we continue to push into this because no one else is talking about it. Even the best of the best, they don't lead with this. I have nothing to lose. I have everything to gain, and I think you guys have everything to gain by coming to this platform and having these conversations. The chat is open. I look forward to seeing you guys and hearing from you what you're seeing in the past 48 hours. Because, mind you, this thing's unraveling. And I want you to know that unequivocally, we are a God first platform. I am a God first podcaster. And I know that there is nothing more important. They, meaning everyone else around us, is there to basically, and when I say everyone else around us, I'm not talking about your family. I'm not talking about the people who you love, the people who are closest to you. I mean the people outside of your center of influence, the people who have been given the responsibility of governing, not only at the federal level, but the state level and the local level. They are not who they appear to be. They are driven on by a force that is not a God first force. I challenge every one of you to put them to the test. Ask them the questions. Call them up. Their numbers are accessible. You can find anyone that's involved in government's phone number. Now, granted, you might not directly get in contact with them. You might get one of their staffers, depending on how far up the chain you go. But let your voice be heard. Ask them, are they God first candidates? Most of them profess to be God first candidates. And if they were God first candidates, then why aren't we seeing different results? Why do we continue to see over and over again the corruption, the cover up, the brokenness of the state of our union, the state of our economy, the state of the people within our country? Yes, is there good? Yes, I find good every day as I go out there. But this is the thing that we are going to struggle with as we continue to move into 2024. When I say more in 2024, I'm not necessarily talking about physical needs being met, even though I believe that's going to be the case. I think that I think we're going to see more physical needs being met. I think you're going to see a loosening of the economy. I think you're going to see a little deflation out of the inflation. I think that the best is yet to come. But when I say more and more in 2024, I'm talking about the ability to see past, to see through all of the gamemanship. If you guys are spending any time listening to the news, it is very apparent that we, many people, were like the COVID crisis, like the Spygate crisis. We were misled. We didn't know how much we were misled. In fact, I think we have just started to get to the center of the onion when we start peeling back the layers. And I think that's what the devil and those who obviously are deceived by the devil are so fearful of. They are going to stand now exposed at a level that all of us will be able to see what they truly are and who they are and how they have misled us in so many different areas of our lives. So I think that's the most important thing that I believe we should cover today. Um, all the rest of it doesn't change, right? We know about the shooting at the Kansas City parade for the Super Bowl parade. Doesn't shock you, right? Some some young people had were in possession of guns. We don't know if those were legal guns, illegal guns, and they happened to go to a place that was very crowded and started to discharge those those weapons. Um, that's not going to stop happening. We're going to continue to see a lot of that. And why is that? Because ultimately, everyone that is willing to take it upon themselves to conduct a violent act like that, they don't hit green or red lights. The stop button doesn't work for them. It's been broken. And the reasons for that number beyond a number that is it's an infinite number. Every every person that uh, that is involved in a violent crime like that happened in Kansas City, it's a case study in of itself. What what took place? I mean, there are common elements, of course, behind all of this, the craziness of the world, whether it's the violent crime, whether it's the economy, which once again, the economy is pretty simple. There's only one entity responsible for the current economic crisis we face, and that is the President of the United States, Bidenomics, and the federal government. The federal government has created the economy that we currently exist in. And that's another thing. They just love to lie about it. And they lie in such eloquent ways. If you listen, go to JB Pritzker's Facebook page or his Twitter feed and listen to what his staff writers have to say about his view on our current economic situation. He paints a picture that things have never been better in Illinois in the past 5 years. Of course, that's when he took office from Bruce Rauner. Things have never been but better, according to JB, according to Joe Biden, two JBs. JB Pritzker, JB Joe Biden. Things have never been better. This is the ultimate deception of the people. And so that's why I say it's important that we put God first in all things. That's going to be the theme of more in 2024. That's what the theme of the DPB show. I do want to let you know that I've had an unbelievable day. I one of the best days ever in a long time. Uh, had the opportunity to spend time with my daughter Hannah and Jim, her husband. They came up from Nashville and are spending some time here in Illinois. So I had an opportunity to go to breakfast with them this morning. Then I went out and still am, you know me, I'm a hustler. Uh, do a lot of side hustles. I still have a real estate broker's license here in the state of Illinois. I'm never going to give that up. I believe that God is leading me to help as many people as I can when it comes to buying and selling real estate in the state of Illinois. I was just sharing with somebody the other day at an event that I spend more time trying to talk people out of buying real estate than than buying it, especially based on the economic conditions. Uh, for an individual, for the market, those are things that don't seem to get covered uh, in the field of real estate. I think people are so anxious, especially those who are practitioners in the industry, to get a sale because that's how they get paid. That's how I get paid, right? Unless I'm doing that for a family member, and I have a kind of a unwritten rule of not uh, capitalizing off of my family. Friends, obviously, a different story, but I've also been very. It's been something that it's near and dear to my heart to always help out my friends in the midst of buying a transaction. I had a company for many years on my own where I contributed as much as well over $1.3 million back to buyers and sellers. When DPB had DPB Real Estate, it was actually David Paul Blumenshine, realtor. I had programs that allowed sellers and buyers to benefit at the closing tables and at the closing table. And there's a reason for that. Um, Legally, as a buyer or seller, you're a principal to the transaction. Therefore, commissions that come out of a transaction can be shared with principals of the transaction. So I took upon myself to develop a business model that did that very thing. Now, this is kind of drifting away from what I started telling you about my daughter, Cassidy, but her and her husband are starting to look at the market and see if there's something viable out there for them at this time. I can tell you that I have a pretty firm stance on the real estate market as we find it today. And this is across the board. This is wherever you go. There has been an inflated market, no different than inflation in the economy. The market is overinflated. How much? I think it's anywhere from 20 to 30%. I believe that the market has to correct itself. I believe it will correct itself. I see that not only in central Illinois, but throughout the state of Illinois and then beyond to other states. It doesn't matter where you're at. I've searched outside of Illinois, and I find that to be the case wherever you go, that the market right now, and there's a lot of reasons, mostly economic reasons, leading economic reasons, the cost of building and reproducing or building new homes is a big part of that. There's a lot of regulation that has been put in place that restricts building when it comes to single family homes. Developers are not encouraged to continue the urban sprawl. I know there's legislation out there, even right now as we speak in Illinois, that is designed to really limit single family developments in the state of Illinois with communities with or counties with populations over 100,000 people, partly because they're looking to create 15-minute cities. So it goes on and on and on, and I just got to double check here, see, because sometimes I don't know if I already always have everything on just the way it's supposed to, but it looks like it appears it is. Yep, it is. And there. But So that's where we find ourselves today. I know that Thursday or Tuesday was a pretty difficult show to listen to. I appreciate everybody that was tuning in and dialing in. On Tuesday, uh, I was calling names out. I believe that in order for us to advance as a party in the state of Illinois, uh, specifically meaning the Republican Party, it's time for change. It's time for leadership change. It's time for leadership change on the national level, on the state level, on the local level, everywhere that we find people who have been involved in the political process over the past 5 years. If they have been in the political process and literally aren't a newcomer as of 2022, I think it's time for them to move on. I think that what we have seen now is that it doesn't matter who you are. You either show up in Washington, Springfield, or at your local municipality, and immediately you are uh, stricken by this thing of spending money we don't have. This isn't how we're going to correct the situation. If we're going to really talk truly about the future of our economy, of our country, of our children and grandchildren's future, then we're going to have to address that immediately. The gamemanship is over, especially when it comes to Ukraine. I know that fascinating as it is, we and we're not talking about the Ukrainian people, and we're not talking about the conflict. Yes, bad actors on both sides, literally bad actors. But Ukraine was used as the world's piggy bank for a long time, a piggy bank for pilfering, for money laundering, and some individuals, and I believe this goes all the way up to President Obama himself, former President Obama, and Hillary Clinton, that the corruption and the levels of corruption and what we currently see as um, our society, our culture, the American way was truly perverted by those two individuals and their henchmen. Uh, they created what we're currently seeing. Now, granted, it takes years. It's no different than COVID. It's going to take time before we truly see the all the ramifications of the COVID crisis as it was forced down upon us at so many different levels, especially when it pertains to small businesses. Small businesses are still barely digging out of the hole that was created worldwide, nationally, and specifically here in the state of Illinois, according to Governor Pritzker's unconstitutional mandates. And yes, they were unconstitutional. He did not have the authority, no matter how much the attorney general was, spinning the in the spin room, trying to convince us otherwise. Our small businesses in Illinois are are barely making it today. We're hearing that across the board. How many are truly having success? As the old saying goes, if liberal ideas were truly working, then show me where liberal ideas are truly working and not the puff that you see on JB Pritzker's social media pages, because he believes that the economy has never been better in the state of Illinois and that we are reaching new highs that have never been seen before. And that just flat out is not true. It's a matter of how people feel. You know it. You can mess with the numbers, which they have for years. I mean, everything that they do is a manipulation of the facts, of the numbers. Rigging the system as they have for years. And the best part about it is we're starting to figure this out. We're seeing it for our own with our own eyes, a new set of eyes. That's what I was alluding to with more in 2024. We're going to see more when we truly lean into God, a God first mindset. God's going to open our eyes in a new way. In fact, that was part of what I put out there on social media this morning as I was covering my daily devotion. And let me just wrap up the best day ever. So I got to go out and spend some time in the countryside, uh, specifically a little south and east of here, in a few quaint little communities. And I will say this, when you see small town America might be struggling, but the patriotism as I drove through those small towns, there's it's it's as strong as it ever has been. And so I know you might hear about what is transpiring in or what is happening in the larger metropolitan areas. It's not happening in a small town. So that song by Jason Aldean, "Try That in a Small Town," you can truly see that lived out day in, day out when you go out and venture into the countryside, especially here in Illinois. The cornfields for me are alive always, whether they have crops in them or not. It's something to see, it's something to behold with the eye. But this is why I believe, and we go back to the old times, because I think that's the building blocks of who we are in a God first mindset. Today, Moses is saying this. Today, I have set before you life and prosperity, death and doom. Isn't that amazing? This was written hundreds of years ago. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I enjoin on you today, loving him and walking in his ways and keeping his commandments, statutes, and decrees, you will live and grow numerous, more in 2024. And the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to occupy. Here comes the warning. If, however, you turn away your hearts and will not listen, but are led astray and adore and serve other gods, which can be anything. God's not necessarily the big G, little g. I tell you now that you will certainly perish. You will not have a long life on the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and occupy. So the warning's pretty clear on what a prosperous life is, especially one of knowledge. And that's what I'm trying to get across as I'm out and about talking to people, especially people in the political arena and pretty much wherever I can. I love the opportunity that I have this podcast uh, to spend 2 hours a week really unpacking what I'm seeing around us. And it literally is all the same thing as we covered a couple weeks ago. There is literally nothing new under the sun. I'm not talking about the technological aspect of things. We know that there's artificial intelligence is building on the horizon at a level that we've never seen before. And I believe that all things that God puts forth can be used for good and for evil. So we know that the technology is changing, but really, truly, how has it really changed other than to take away what we were promised it would give us? Isn't that fascinating that technology was supposed to free us, to give us a sense of freedom, to enjoy God, family, and a way of life, the pursuit of happiness. And really, what it has done, it's restricted us like never before. How often do we truly leave technology behind? I, it's hard for me. Listen, look, I'm on a stream yard. I'm a platform of social media talking to you about what we truly have control over. So much of what we don't see, the corruption and all that, very little of that we have control over, other than letting our voice be heard. The Constitution is very um, strict about what our rights are. I thought I had my other pocket constitution, and it's spelled out in the Declaration of Independence. It's interesting that my daughter Hannah and I were reading this morning, and she actually had to make note of it because we were talking about the consent of the governed and what that looks like, and where are we in the process of that? Because I don't know about you, but I think that the government is totally off the rails. When as it says in the book of Deuteronomy, when we basically abandon everything, you know, that we've turned away our hearts and we will not listen to God, then what happens? Well, that's where we're at on the federal level, on the state level, on the municipal level. That's why I challenge you to call these representatives up, no matter who it is. Your local representatives, your county board members, your city council members, your state legislators, your federal legislators, and challenge them to ask them about "In God We Trust," because that's what it comes down to. Do we trust God? It's on our currency. I don't even believe that's the case in most churches now. Do we truly put our faith and trust in God? Are we living a God first life? Are we governing based on a God first life? Because the Declaration of Independence spells it out. And I know that this is a little different than my pocket one, so I got to quickly find out where it's listed at here. But but that's the essence of it. The consent of the governed, which is who we are. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women were created equal, and that they are endowed by their creator and with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men and women, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Consent of the governed. That's you and me. That's why I'm encouraging you to call your elected officials and challenge them with the Constitution. Have your Constitution in hand. Pull it up on your iPhone or your Droid. Have the language of the Declaration, because what it spells out next is where the rest of this show is going to go. And Hannah, my daughter, and I, as we discussed this, she said, "Dad, I think we've reached that level." And this is the level we've reached, that the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter. You and me, it is our right through the Declaration to alter or to abolish it, basically to scrap it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation in such principles. Folks, they put this forward 250 plus years ago. And that's where we're at today. The government has gone wild. They're out of control. They're not representing us. They're not about God first. In God we trust. Everything about the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States of America, is woven around our belief, our Judeo-Christian beliefs. Yeah, I agree with you, Dennis. It doesn't, but the thing is, you can't expect to adhere to a document that has basically gone by the wayside. What we need to is, we don't scrap the document. We scrap the government, not the document, the government. I hope I hope that I didn't come across as saying that we scrap the Constitution. No, the Constitution is going to live on and is a document that is timeless, just like the Holy Bible. No, what I'm talking about, Dennis, is we've got to scrap every elected official who has held office. And I said since 2022, and I know that seems a little crazy, right? But I think all of them need to go. You know, the old saying, throw the bums out. No, I think it's beyond that. I think they are all culpable in the corruption that has gone on. In fact, if you and I, as the laity, as the citizens, the citizen leaders, were to conduct the crimes that they have at the level they have, we would be in jail. They've stolen from America. You can't have $32 trillion, $33 trillion in debt without stealing. And that's where we're at. Are we going to truly fight for the American way? Fight for this Constitution, the constitutional republic that we have realized for most of my life. And as I have found out, uh, it was being undermined for many years. As much as I thought it was being protected, it was being undermined, especially during the early 2000s, and we should have seen it coming. Granted, you know, 2020 vision sometimes happens after the fact. That the ability to have clarity, the ability to see beyond the corruption happens years after. And that is unfolding right now, especially when it comes to the Russia crisis, the Spygate. As far as in Illinois, it's going to be years past JB Pritzker's terms that we start realizing the damage that was created by SB uh, SB1, which is the education bill that was put forth by our very own state senator here locally, who thankfully is no longer in office. That was a brain or manufactured legislation that was supposed to make our school systems better here in Illinois. The sanctuary state bill. So you have SB1, SB31. You have HB 40, which is the infanticide bills where we now are killing innocent life beyond or up to the date of birth, taxpayer funded in Illinois, and the list goes. It's hard. I remember being in the state capitol with my wife, and we were there when they were considering this legislation. Of thank you, as always, my biggest cheerleader and fan is right there. Um, but my wife and I were there present as they were considering legislation that dealt with the parental consent for a 12-year-old. That 12-year-olds didn't have to have parental consent in order to go and have a medical procedure done. One specifically that is involves, um, you know, the ending of a life. Now, granted, how the life even started in a 12-year-old, that in of itself is probably a crime. First and foremost, I'm pretty certain of that. But this is all this is all predicated on adhering to the Constitution. As Dennis says, it doesn't need to be scrapped. No, the Constitution doesn't need to be scrapped. The government does. And I hope that I made myself clear that that language in the Declaration states that it's up to us, because ultimately this is a document, a piece of parchment paper originally, right? And what is the meaning behind it? If the people aren't willing to, as you said, Dennis, adhere to it. And I don't think it's the people, the consent of the governed, that don't want to adhere to the laws, the governance of the Constitution, the rule of law. I think it's the government. It's the people who have taken office and quickly realize, I mean, and it doesn't take long. As we saw it down in the state capitol, and we see out in the United States Capitol. Here we have, I know many of you probably like me, really enjoy listening to Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. In fact, he was up in the Rosemont area, Chicago, north and towards Chicago, um, the other night at a dinner with about 800 people. And fascinating as it is, Senator Kennedy voted yes on this most recent Senate bill to continue to fund Ukraine. And it seems like there's a lot of language in there that deals with basically putting Trump in an impeachable position if he were to stop funding Ukraine once he wins the presidency, because now that's their triage, right? This is how they're going to try to circumvent the Trump administration 2.0, is they're going to try to write every law they can prior to January of 2025 that will basically deem Trump uh, in a unable to to truly govern as the president, to go back and put things in place that were quickly removed. I know that um, my wife and I were talking about it this morning. She wanted to know, and I can't remember specifically what the legislation was now. I just tried to recall it, but it was something that Biden scrapped, which he scrapped so many things, literally with the stroke of a pen. The guy says he has no power to do things, but he sure did in the first 10 days of his administration back in January of 2021. He sure did have the authority then. He did away with most of uh, the border security that was put in place by the Trump administration. Had no problem with that. Didn't have any problem shutting down the Keystone pipeline, shutting off oil production, putting thousands and thousands of union workers out of work. You never heard an outcry from the unions in regards to that. You look what he's done with the Green New Deal in a stroke of a pen. So many things Joe Biden did in the first, you know, 10 days. He didn't even wait for the first 100 days. He went to work in the first day, the first 2 days, the first 3 days, making sure that he could uh, put in place the things that would lead us to where we're at today, which isn't very good. That's where we find ourselves. Um, Hold on, I'm gonna throw this up real quick. Thank you, my wife. It's good. We went from the rally, David Paul, about allowing adolescents aborting their children without consent in Illinois. We literally have a House Bill 4876 criminalizing any parent who denies an abortion for their child. Wow, you know what? I did realize that. I didn't realize that was the case. We were talking about how January 2019, Biden made it to all illegals would be this fourth counted in national consensus. Yes. Um, but would that have been under Biden? That would have been Biden in the counting because Biden took office in 2021. Um, January of 2021. He was elected in 2020. So that could have been an executive order put forth. I don't know. The census itself was not completed in it was completed in 2020, but it was not completed to the full in 2021. So I don't know if that was a recount. I'm going to have to dig deeper in that. I know we were talking about that, but it was something that he did put in place uh, shortly after he took office. And I don't know if that uh, is. I don't know what the effect of that is. I can't say how that counting is because all the counting, like we were just talking about, the numbers don't really matter. They make it up. You know, who knows at what level? Y- The interesting thing is there were over 10 million who came into the country illegally from 2008 all the way, even through the Trump administration, the Trump 1.0. Trump was doing everything to stop the flow. We know that he did that. Hence the reason he ran on build the wall, because he knew he had to shut off this thing that was happening over 8 years of Obama, which was this invasion of the southern border. Well, they estimate that 10 million people came into the country illegally then. Joe Biden just said, hold my beer, and went about in 3 years bringing 8 million more people in. That's a total of 18 million. I've been throwing out numbers like 12 and 15 million are here in our country illegally. I remember talking to Ray Estrada. He was formerly running for the congressional seat in the 17th district. And I remember Ray telling me, obviously, he was at one time, he was, well, he was born and raised in Honduras. Um, no, Nicaragua, not Honduras, Nicaragua. And he talked about the amount of people that were here. He always said 12 to 15 million. Now to find out that that number is 18 million people, we don't have the resources. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. We see that right before our eyes. I think you're seeing that in communities across the United States. We don't have the ability to house them, to care for them. However, the federal government is more than willing to give your money, my money away. And it's not structured, it's not anything planned out. It truly is a giveaway, because where is it going to lead going forward? And that's why It is so important that we reach out and talk to our legislators and put them on notice. We want God first candidates at all levels. I want a God first candidate as my representative, not only on the town council or the city council, in the county board. I want a God first candidate. I want a God first candidate as my state representative. If they're telling me about compromise, I've heard that over and over again, that you have to compromise in order to win certain districts. No, I'm sure that doesn't play out when you reach the pearly gates. When you go before God Almighty and you tell them, and He asks, give an accounting, and you said I had to compromise. I don't think God's going to compromise. God doesn't compromise. We got to stand on the principles, the God given rights we were given, and let people know. Stop cowering from those things. What can they do? The interesting thing is, I left the studio the other night. I encountered one of my fans, and I'm just being tongue in cheek with that. I I was driving down the road, and suddenly this gentleman next to me, young guy, I I look over, and he's giving me two middle fingers. So he's basically not holding on to a steering wheel, and he's so adamant about fingering me, giving me the middle finger, and I was like, "What kind of wacko is this?" And that's why I think it's important to protect yourself, protect your family, prepare yourself. There's a couple things I believe going into this more in 2024 that you need. I believe you need emergency food. I don't have a sponsor that I can tell you about. I can only tell you that there's plenty of them out there, Patriot Supplies being one of them. I have emergency food at my house, ammunition. I believe that we need to protect our families. And I'm not talking about hunting. I'm talking about protecting our families. Um, I know that I I'm not worried anymore about being on somebody's watch list. Believe me, I know that I'm on a watch list. That happened the day that I made a decision to go to Washington, D.C., um, and made that list. And as we see it play out, January 6th will eventually be known as the largest perpetration of political theater against a governed people, against us, the consent of the governed. And I don't consent with the way that they handled the January 6th. In fact, I believe that it was something that was pure, unadulterated political theater where they planned. It was no different than COVID, pandemic, and so was J6. So was spying on Trump. So is Trump right now. I mean, come on. Trump points this out. Many others point it out. Trump hasn't been in office for 2.5 years. Why didn't they bring charges? If this was all what it was all about, I know many of you know what this is all about. It happened at Mar-a-Lago. Proud member of the list. Yes, you are. Hold on, I got to put that up. Becky Swan says she's a proud member of the list. Yes, you are, Becky. But you know what it was all about at Mar-a-Lago. There's a specific binder they're looking for. It was a declassified document. That's what they were there for. It wasn't secrets. Well, they are kind of secrets, but it was information that led to Spygate, which basically shows us what transpired in Ukraine over all of these years. We only hear rumors of all the things that were going on, the money laundering through Ukraine, but we hear of bioweapon facilities in Ukraine. I mean, there's so many things that happen in Ukraine. And this isn't about the Ukrainian people. It's not about the country of Ukraine. It's about their government, no different than our government. It's not about our constitution, folks. It's about the governing bodies, those who are elected to and sit there and place their hand on the Bible and swear to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it doesn't happen. We're going to see more and more reveal itself. I hope that today's show encourages you to go out, contact first and foremost. Don't forget, it is early voting season. Get out and vote. That started on February 8th and goes in through March 19th. Uh, it is important, specifically if you're in the district of the 17th congressional district. I would appreciate that you mark your ballot for the delegates under the Trump delegates. Yours truly is a name there. If you happen to reside in a very small portion, this is another shameless plug, in the fifth precinct of Normal. If you're Normal 5, the fifth precinct in Normal, yours truly is the precinct committee person on the ballot. If you are polling a Republican ballot, I but doubt that very few of you who listen and hear this message are going to be people who are not Republicans. Ultimately, I don't know how anybody can continue to support and follow the Democrat Party in its current condition. It is made up of people who not to say that there aren't corrupt liars in the Republican Party, because there is. Um, I'm just weighing it on a weighted scale. If I were going to err, I would err with a Republican over a Democrat any day, every day, twice on Sunday. Doesn't mean that they're not corrupt, because they are. I named names the other day. I was talking about the different chair people across the state. I was talking about our state chair. They're corrupt. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. To this day, the state chair, Don Tracy, has not apologized for his support of um, Richard Irvin. And what Richard Irvin did to this party when he was running for governor, which ultimately propped up by the billionaire Ken Griffin of Citadel, who no longer is in the state of Illinois. He took his $26 billion and went to Miami and became one of the largest supporters for Ron DeSantis. I'm sure right now he's probably still throwing some money over towards Nikki Haley. He's an anti-Trumper, and that's where all of this lies. It's the Trump derangement syndrome, the anti-Trump, the Trump, those people who believe that Trump is the next coming of Hitler, and the list goes on and on. These are the people that we got to continue to call to task. As I said, they exist right here locally. I talk to them often, and they are conflicted. They truly believe that getting elected is more important than representing the people. They are more convinced that the only way that they can truly represent the people is by getting in office, and that's not the case. We have seen that just here today, right? They were quickly pushing this Patriot Act, the continuation of the Patriot Act, the continuation of spying on the American people without cause. They could go to a FISA court and get these FISA warrants to spy on us. But in light of what has been released, and now we know with the former head of the CIA, John Brennan, and his acolyte, who now is I can't remember her name specifically, but she now oversees the CIA. I got a loss there. That happens for DPB. Too many names, too many players, too many deceivers. How do you keep all the deceivers in line? You know, I never have a problem keeping the good people in line. And when I say good, I mean faithful. I mean, the Bible specifically states that nobody's good but God. I believe there's goodness in every heart, if you can find it. Sometimes you can't, because it's buried so deep in the recesses of their being. But I still believe that everyone can come back from that. But we had this act put forward, so we know that they're still trying to move to silence us. And as Becky said, she's a proud member of the list. Uh, her and her husband went through uh, many difficult times, even outside of the political realm. We all have. I put up a posting today that alluded to that. the suffering of Christ and what he endured. Think about this. And I thought this was fascinating about my devotion this morning. Jesus went into Jerusalem because he already had foretold what was going to happen to him. But he boldly went into it. He went towards the suffering. He knew what lied ahead of him. He knew how corrupt the Jewish people were, that they were in denial of this Messiah. Just food for thought. It fascinates me. We get caught up sometimes in dealing with the suffering that we face in life and what comes at us, and knowing that none of this is lost. God sees everything. And I think sometimes, even in the suffering, if we can continue to find the love that comes in the midst of the suffering, that we continue to grow and we continue to be open for more in 2024. Hey, I had a big day, as I told you. Uh, my mind is a little frazzled, especially coming off of Tuesday's show. Wasn't where I thought I was going to go, but the Holy Spirit moved me to start naming name and calling out people. And actually, I can tell you that my wife's been encouraging me to share those things with you for a little while, and I just didn't feel compelled, and the Holy Spirit convicted my heart. And once again, I'm not meaning ill upon those people. It's time for them to step aside. They're deceivers. They've deceived us, and all of them need to go, up and down the list. So I'm going to continue to call that out where I can, specifically in the county level, because I think it's important that we address these issues. Hold on real quick. We've got some notifications coming in. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, it's just Trump reacting to Fannie Willis's testimony. Once again, all window dressing, because it's all behavior that is inconsistent with a God first mentality and mindset. When we stop turning away from God, when we stop deceiving others, then and only then will we be able truly to be consistent with what we were called to be as Americans and the Constitution. There's nothing that talks about deceiving others in the Constitution. In fact, to the contrary, it talks about rising above the deception, um, and living a life consistent with what we hold to be true, that all men, all women are created equal. And we've been given gifts by our Creator: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we can get back to that? As Dennis said, we don't need to scrap the Constitution, and we don't. We need to adhere to it. We need to get others to adhere to it. All men, all women should put it upon themselves to take their pocket constitution or their electronic form of a constitution and call their representatives, every last one of them. None of them are insignificant, and challenge them through the principles of what our founders put forth in that document. It is time. It's the only way we can go forward in 2024. Hey, that's all I've got for you. Let me go to the chat, make sure I didn't miss out on anybody. As always, once again, like, share, subscribe to the DPB show. I can't even begin to tell you what lies beyond this weekend. I think it's setting itself up with everything we're seeing as we continue to process through this election season, that the Democrats don't truly have somebody that can compete with Trump in this presidential year. As far as the state goes, there's such a lock here in the state of Illinois. J.B. Pritzker still rumored to be someone who possibly could be the nominee for president on the Democrat side. He surely can fund his own campaign, so that I think that is part of the consideration, and especially what he has done to the state. They would love to see the rest of the United States become Illinois or California or New York. That's what they're banking on. They're banking on that enough people will say, yes, we need to go in a new direction, the new Green Deal. I think we need to go into an old direction. It's called the Constitution of the United States of America. Hey, until we see each other again, I just want to leave you with that I love you and God loves you more. I bid you peace, a peace that surpasses all understanding. Go out and challenge your elected officials to be God first uh, candidates or God first elected officials. Hey, until then, till Tuesday of next week, I will wish you all the best and we'll see you then.